Welcome to Sports Charlotte. I am your host, Ashley Mahoney. This is the Charlotte Post podcast about sports in Charlotte. Thank you so much for joining me. We have first-time guest with us today. Aaron, tell me how to say your last name.
Maund.
Maund. I was going to say it right, but there's that slight chance I was going to say it wrong. So Aaron Maund, MLS and USL Championship veteran. Thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. How are you today?
I'm great. It's a beautiful day in the Queen City. Crisp but beautiful.
Definitely.
And I appreciate you asking how to pronounce my name because not a lot of people do.
Not really?
Yeah, and a lot of people butcher it, so I appreciate that.
Well, okay. So tell me the worst that you've heard of someone trying to say your last name.
I've gotten Maund, which is like it's it's an easy mistake to make. But the funny story behind that is, when I first got into MLS, my first jersey I ever had in my locker on media day, the first, visual of that jersey was spelled Mound. So that it kind of is just one of those things that kind of sticks in my brain.
Oh gosh. I mean, yes, that's definitely on the club where you're like, hey, that's not my last name. That's nope. But tell us a bit about your journey. Obviously, people are familiar with you here with the Charlotte Independence, but everyone's got their once upon a time story with the game of where it goes from, hey, this is something I enjoy doing at a youth to teenage level to something that's like, hey, I can do this professionally. I can make a living off this. So tell us about your journey, your once upon a time moment.
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to put it into a few words, but I'll try. I'm from Boston. I grew up playing since I was about 8 years old. My dad is of Trinidadian background, and he was definitely spearheaded my dive into the game. And being from Boston, soccer wasn't the biggest sport at the time, but I think that my community that I grew up in was very. It was a big Caribbean community, and so soccer was there than other places around Boston. And so my group of friends that I grew up with, we just played the game a lot. And that's really where I fell in love with it. Just, grassroots, local park. That was really where, I thought, I started to dream like maybe if I work hard, I could be a professional one day. But that kind of hope wasn't really real to me until about my sophomore year of college. I went to Notre Dame. I loved my time at Notre Dame. And it was just so necessary for my growth in the game and growth as a player and as a person. But that sophomore season, I got called into the U20 camp, and they were gearing up for the U20 World Cup that was in Egypt in 2009. And so I was involved in that, and that team was. There was a lot of pros. There weren't that many guys in college, so I kind of got the feeling like, all right, well, I can play at the professional level, and that was kind of where, I guess you could say, I kind of like had the idea, like, oh, well, I think this is what I'm gonna do, and I think I'm gonna go all in on this professional soccer thing.
And since then, you've had a journey that has taken you from MLS and it's eventually led you here to Charlotte. And tell me a bit about, you shared that, your first jersey ever, that feeling of that first professional jersey, seeing it in your locker and your name spelled wrong. So tell us a bit about, your experience of making that jump into the league from the collegiate game and, where your professional journey has gone from there.
Yeah. So I got drafted in 2012 by Toronto FC, and that was like such a surreal experience. I didn't end up going to the actual draft, but I was at home and I shared that moment with my family, and it was just a really special moment. But yeah, I wasn't. I don't think I was expected to get drafted, in the first round. I ended up getting drafted in the first round. I don't know that people thought that I was going to make the team after I got drafted. I ended up making the team. And then I got um, that jersey. And so, like a lot of these instances, like is a real like chip on your shoulder moment, I guess you can say. And that jersey definitely was something that has stuck with me throughout my entire career and has been a motivation for whatever reason. But definitely, I think that playing for Toronto was an amazing experience, amazing year of my life. I was very lucky to get traded from Toronto to Salt Lake because I feel like in Salt Lake, I really came into my own as a professional. And there was just a really good vibe around that Salt Lake locker room for a number of years that I was there. Uh, and it was, I got to learn, I got to, make mistakes occasionally. And it was just a real family feel. Um, and was just, so important in my career. I think, when I look back at my career, Salt Lake was definitely the place where uh, I feel like I came into my own and really started to enjoy life as a professional. Because I feel like when I first got into the league, I was trying so hard just to kind of find my feet, find out where I fit in, you know, uh, just try to just get better, and just was working so hard to do that. And I feel like in Salt Lake, I really started to enjoy my football and, uh, like I said, coming to my own. So those years I really remember fondly. Um, and then, I got traded. It's so funny. Like right when I was really settling into Salt Lake, I bought a house there and was really loving the town, and ended up getting traded to Vancouver like 2 months after that. And that was very bittersweet. I was so excited for the new opportunity, but Salt Lake was so such a special place in my heart. But yeah, so Vancouver was really unbelievable city, unbelievable fans. Um, it was definitely a time in my career where I felt like, you know, it's tough because I felt like I was playing some of my best football there. Um, but this game is very opinion oriented, and um, for whatever reason, I never really got the run of games that I really need to solidify myself there. Ended up moving on to Charlotte after 2 years. So that's where I am now, and I love Charlotte. The past 2 years have been great. Um, I've kind of loved seeing the strides that the Independents have taken, and we took as a group, and I'll never forget my time here as well.
And you came into Charlotte when they had a bit of a coaching change with Jim McGinnis as head coach and Mike Jeffries, the inaugural head coach, becoming the general manager. And of course, everyone knows June 12th, 2019, McGinnis is sacked after that start. Mike Jeffries resumes his position as head coach. Were you brought in by Mike or by Jim, or a combination of the two?
So a combination of the two. I believe Mike was the GM and Jim was the coach when I was brought in. So um, yeah, definitely a combination of the two.
And it's interesting to see, the change within the club when Mike came back in. And there, of course, you guys made the playoffs this past season, ended up, exiting in the first round against Charleston, ended up having the opportunity to host for the very first time in club history a playoff match, which, of course, there's a pandemic. Kind of, it was an interesting year. We will get into that as well, but there was also, kind of this. It seemed like there was a shift from when things started off, with the road win in March at Sporting KC, to the way that the season ended up going, in terms of it's a condensed regular season. It's a very difficult time in terms of navigating, one, the sporting world alone, two, it's an election year, which has got a lot of high tension for everyone. And three, then there is the spotlight that returns to racial and social injustice in this country. And it seemed like a number of players, particularly your teammates, Hugh Roberts, as well as Brandon Miller, really stepped up as advocates. And then you see all-time USL championship leading goal scorer Dane Kelly, his celebration, every time he scored, going to the corner, taking a knee, raising his fist up high, and this call of almost a dichotomy that has been discussed at length between the front office and a lack of movement, and players saying, okay, well, you're not going to do anything. Here's how we're going to continue to advocate both on and off the field, which brings me in turn to your recent advocacy. This week, you put 3 of your game-worn autographed kits up for raffle to support those who are facing housing insecurity in terms of providing them with winter cold gear. I know I just threw a lot at you, but let's start with the raffle and your decision to step up and do that. I know you raised over $1,500 within a matter of hours in terms of being able to provide those necessary items for people who are facing housing insecurity. As like you said, it's a beautiful day, it's a crisp day, but it is definitely getting colder.
Yeah. No, thank you for highlighting that, because like you said, I have had a lot of teammates that have been inspirations. Brandon Miller, Hugh Roberts, and a number of others have also been huge inspirations of what they're doing in Charlotte, and what they have done, and what they will continue to do, I'm sure. And so I saw these coats. I follow someone on Instagram, Inglewood Barbie, and she's out of Chicago, and I saw that she had just a party on Thanksgiving for the homeless population out there, and I saw the genuine joy on a lot of their faces. There was dancing, there was good food involved, there was essential giveaways, and just there was a lot of happiness there, and it really inspired me. Just that was an example of me of someone who may not be like some huge organized corporation or whatever it is, charitable organization, but who's having a huge impact in the community and inspiring a lot of people. And so I kind of thought around, like, what could I do, because I know I could do something. And I saw I had a bag of jerseys just sitting there, and Sharpie wasn't, so I decided to throw a couple of those and auction them off, and it's been incredible, the response. And it really isn't about the jerseys. A lot of people have reached out and dug deep in their pockets, which I appreciate, because like you said, we're in a global pandemic right now, and there's a lot of loss around, including jobs, and money's tight for a lot of people. So to get that kind of response is definitely inspiring, and is definitely going to push me to be as active in the community as I possibly can, and not just Charlotte, but a lot of people have reached out in different cities who want to do similar things, and I think that this can be the start of something that is of real value.
And I love the point that you made there. And I think that's something that people so often see and say, oh gosh, I wish I could do something. I wish I could make an impact. And they think that the only method or avenue to do so is through a large corporation. And like you said, you don't have to be a large corporation in order to impact your community, especially now. Like every possible step is going to help someone, whether it's, something like this, or you can see the work that Brandon and Hugh have done in terms of Block Love, Creative Player Foundation, Heal Charlotte. I mean, there are so many ways that people can step up right now. And when you see, like you said, this isn't going to be just Charlotte specific. There is a national and an international, for that matter, need. But with this particular fundraiser, was it something that benefited Charlotte specifically, or is this something that benefited other cities as well?
So this benefited Charlotte specifically, and happy to announce that the first 12 coats were ordered this morning, and so we're waiting patiently for those. I felt like a kid looking for the delivery man outside. I just really am excited about it. But because we surpassed the goal, I do want to send 2 coats up to the friends in Chicago. Honestly, because it's like the coldest place in the world up there, and I couldn't even imagine a night, um, as cold as it is up there. So uh, definitely, the need is immediate, and most of everything that, most of everything that was donated, was entered into the raffle will be in Charlotte, but I do want to send two coats up to Chicago because I think that, like I said, she was my inspiration up there, and the work that's being done up there is incredible. So, and I also want to note that the coats are from a company based out of Detroit called Empowerment Plan, and this company is incredible. It's definitely changed the way that I think about how a business needs to be set up and how it can be set up and all the possibilities that you can use a business for giving back. They produce these coats, and these coats are $125 a pop, but they turn into sleeping bags. Um, and the production of these sleeping bag coats all happens in Detroit. Um, the man, the seamstresses are all part of the homeless population, and what they do is they give them a stable job and help them find housing, stable housing, and it's just like such a self-sufficient, really really cool company. And they even use the fabric is upcycled from GM in Patagonia, I believe. So it's just it's incredible and another inspiration. So yeah, it's just really cool.
How did you come across this particular organization?
It's funny because it took a little bit of research because I was sitting on Instagram.
Instagram is a
Well,
great place.
it
Instagram is
really,
delightful.
it really is. And I follow the creative director of Louis Vuitton is Virgil Abloh, and I follow him, and he posted this coat just on his story, and I was like, whoa, like did I just see that right? Like stories are pretty quick. So I went back and was looking at the coat and saw the design and was just kind of blown away, and then found the YouTube video of some reviews, and then kind of found this website and reached out and had some really good conversations with the people that run this organization. So I really hope that there could be a long-term partnership with Empowerment Plan because like I said, they're just incredible.
And it seems like there's certainly this, I wouldn't say trend, but this movement within 2020 that has been created by, a number of things. And whether it's, I wouldn't say revelations or just this call on so many different fronts to get involved, to have conversations, to do what you can, whether that means, fostering a sense of community like you've done, like your teammates have done, like so many people are saying, like there's a lot that, people can do when they come together, and it can just take, an individual spark. It took an Instagram post, and obviously, you've seen the response that has come from that. But is this something that at this point you had been considering doing, or it's just something that, you felt a call on your heart that said, now's the time to get involved?
Yeah, definitely was, you know, playing around with different ideas of how I can get involved. But this, when I kind of saw the opportunity, it just kind of clicked and made sense for right now. And yeah, I can see it evolving. I also am pretty involved in real estate as kind of a side hustle thing that um, been trying to build, and I can see it. There's a natural progression there, and I hope that the two can be hand in hand because, like you said, the housing insecurity thing is real and it's growing, and it seems like so solvable. You know what I mean? Like there's so much space, there's so many resources, and we really shouldn't be going through these kind of things. So, but like you said, I would say like the way I look at history and when things are getting done, like real impactful things in communities and around the world, it's done by regular people. It's done by the masses. It's done by you know, people like you and I. So, uh, like you said, it's important to, yes, put that pressure on corporations. Yes, continue to support some of these charitable organizations. But in the meantime, there's things that we can do as individuals, as small groups, as groups of friends, as whatever is your tribe, your group. There's things that we can do to make a huge impact.
Yeah, you mentioned real estate as a side hustle. How did you get into that? And walk us through what it's like being a professional athlete with a side hustle.
um, yeah. So, um, how did I get into real estate? So in Salt Lake, I spoke about buying that house right before I was traded. One of the season ticket holders, I was having a conversation with him after the game, after a random game. I can't remember what game it was, but I told him that I had plans of buying a house, and he actually ended up being into real estate. He ended up, I didn't know this at the time, but he owned like 77 properties in Salt Lake, and he really, kind of took me under his wing and, brought me out to lunch and explained to me the different ways that you can set up, this is boring stuff, but set up loans and, FHA this and all these different avenues that you can, really do some cool things with. And so I ended up, instead of buying just like a regular single family home, I ended up buying a duplex, renting out the one half, and blah 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 blah. But it definitely was like a spark for an idea, and definitely got me thinking. And now I do different types of deals. I'm right now in the middle of my first flip, which is not as easy as HGTV would make it seem. Which is actually in kind of around Beatty's Ford, which is a really cool neighborhood around Charlotte, really historic neighborhood. So really excited about that. But yeah, I mean, the main goal of all that, and before this, was just to be able to provide affordable housing for people, because like I said, I'm from Boston, and it's an issue there as well. And there's all these different cool types of properties that are multifamily that should be Section 8 and should be affordable housing. And I think in the real estate world kind of forget about the social impact that they can have while still making money, and while still being a profitable business. So definitely what I've been trying to explore, and how I've been trying to grow that business with that in mind. And like I said, I think the sleeping bags and just seeing what's going on and with the tent city in Charlotte really plays into my thought process around what can be done.
Tell me a bit more about, you mentioned the aspect of real estate, but still being able to provide affordable housing and still have it be a profitable business. And to, an outsider just hearing that, like, wait a second, how can it be affordable yet you still make money? So for those who may be listening to this and thinking, huh, explain that for them. How are you able to provide affordable housing and still make a profit?
Yeah, well, I mean, it obviously depends on, you know, what your margins are in a certain space, but a lot of times it can be very beneficial, just because um, it's not paid, um, or at least it's not paid a lot of instances directly by the tenant. So it's very reliable. Um, and if you do your due diligence, and you're just kind of very aware of the industry, it can be very, very rewarding, and like I said, just very reliable. And a lot of people have these horror stories, but I think that those are few and further in between than uh, a lot of people let on.
So is this a matter of working with local agencies who are able to subsidize the housing costs, or how does all of that work?
Yeah, so every city is a little bit different, um, but for the most part, yeah, you're working directly with the local agencies, and they're dealing a lot with the placement and doing a lot of the heavy lifting. So it like I said, it's once you make that decision, it's pretty straightforward, and you'll find that a lot of the cities are very helpful in setting it up and getting through some of the paperwork and some of the things that you have to go through. But yeah.
Awesome. And you mentioned the property on Beatties Ford Road, which is, of course, Post readers, they're very familiar with the BFR. A lot of them live on the BFR, have called the BFR home. I know our publishers went to West Charlotte and are very, very proud Dub C alums. And of course, Councilman, I call him Smudgy, but to everyone else, he's Councilman James Mitchell. And of course, with the Corridors of Opportunity program that's going on along, Beatties Ford Road, West Boulevard, and as well as the other four parts of Charlotte, you see this focal point of where affordable housing is definitely in the conversation for the city. So tell me a bit about, one, how many properties do you have in Charlotte? And two, what has been the process of working with the city? What's that been like so far?
That is, well, Charlotte is very interesting. It's been a little bit tougher, just because of my situation and being here for such a short time. Like I said, this is going on my second year here, so that was my first kind of foray, and I've done a couple deals in um, Rock Hill and kind of around Charlotte, but not. This is my first foray into Charlotte, and a lot of that is, when you get to a place, there's a little bit of figuring out, trying to figure out what neighborhoods and just kind of like the lay of the land, and so this is a very exciting place in terms of real estate. There's lots of opportunities. There's lots of space. Like being from the Northeast, I'm just really not used to this type of, I guess, landscape. Like there's a lot of space, and uh, it's definitely different. So I do want to continue to um, explore what Charlotte can offer and work with council people, and everyone that's kind of in that space. So hopefully this can be kind of a leaping pad to doing more work in Charlotte.
Fantastic. Well, hey, you mentioned it's a flip, so we can't wait to see the before and after pictures and hear how everything ends up turning out for you. So, as you navigate the off season, what does a typical off season entail? I know it's a little different because there's a pandemic. You're waiting on what the USL Championship schedule rollout will be like, and all of the fun things that have come with 2020. Yay! But what does the off season look like for you?
Well, like you said, this offseason is a little bit different. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be with Charlotte next year. So there is, right now, I have my agent hat on. I represent myself. So I am looking for a new situation, new team. I love Charlotte, and I hope to get back here someday for sure. But I think the immediate future is going to be somewhere else. But the off season is an interesting piece, especially an off season where you don't really know uh, where the end is going to be. There's not really a firm date of a startup, so a lot of it is just management. You don't want to do too much, but this is such a good time to grow your game, grow yourself, and you can make a lot of good strides in the off season. So I don't really sit still for long. I think I was back out there about a week and a half later. Just a lot of it too is just off-season training by yourself. A lot of that's like therapeutic for me. So I really just enjoy that. So it definitely comes with its challenges. I think this year is going to be a lot different for those reasons. But uh, yeah, I'm super excited to see kind of what happens in the next coming weeks and days.
Now, for those of us who have not experienced one, playing professionally, and two, what it's like to be a free agent in this league or MLS or any league for that matter, what's it like to be a free agent, and how does the pandemic, aside from not knowing when the season starts, how does it impact that?
Well, I think, just like, any industry, the finances are completely changed. You know, like I said, there's some tough times right now, and clubs, leagues aren't really, they're not immune to that. So people are trying to figure out, what's going to happen in terms of fans, in terms of a start date, in terms of budget sizes, and so it's very tough. And I would say that it doesn't get easier after 30. I turned 30 in September, and it seems like that is, that stigma is very real, although I don't feel it at all. But, it makes sense. I understand it, but it gets a lot colder out there on the other side of 30. So, um, you know, I, I at this point of my career, I've been through this enough times where it's not a freak out like it used to be, because it used to be a freak out for real. But I'm very comfortable in you know my career and my game, and um, where it's going. I'm very confident I'll land on my feet, and uh, regardless of this pandemic. So
Well, there is another club in town. So, I mean, they aren't playing until 2022, and I'm not throwing this out there in any way, but Charlotte FC has landed. So, with the addition of that, does that offer, more? I mean, of course, it's going to offer more options in terms of, young players looking at the game, but in terms of players who come in here, is there an opportunity for them to make a splash with the USL side and then perhaps get a nod from the MLS side?
absolutely, absolutely. And I don't know the specific relationship that's going to be there between the two clubs. It's pretty far. Those discussions are far away from me, but you see it around the league, around I guess the soccer world in general. One perfect example I think of all the time is Alfonso Davies. Um, I played with him in Vancouver, and he started off playing USL for the Wolves, and it's surreal to see where he is now. So the pathway, the examples are there, and I don't think Charlotte's going to be any different. When I go through runs in my neighborhood, and I live kind of east of the city, but when I go through runs in my neighborhood, there's Charlotte FC flags everywhere, and they haven't played a game yet. So it's it's such a tough time to leave the city because it's so exciting. Like the idea of having another team in this area of the South really is historic in itself, and it's just I think that it's just going to be accepted widely, and it already has been. So it's
It'll
just really exciting.
It'll certainly be interesting to see how everything plays out. And you mentioned Alfonso Davies, and of course, when you think of him, for me, in terms of just the journalistic perspective of also covering someone else who went through USL and then the 2018 MLS All-Star game down in Atlanta, Tyler Adams, and
Yeah.
just watching the Champions League run. Gosh, it seems like it was forever ago, but it was in fact earlier this year. And seeing those two go up against each other, you're like, man, just 2 years ago, those kids, I mean, literally kids, it makes me feel so old.
Mm.
But,
Yeah.
of course, men now, but I'm like, oh gosh, everyone, I'm like, if if there's still a teen attached to your age, or even,
Hmm.
everyone, gosh, it's going to be bad when my nieces turn, like 20. I'm like, oh God, I'm old. But nevertheless, you see guys like that come through, and then they make their splash in Europe. And of course, once upon a time in another lifetime, I had a thing when I was about 7 years old. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to grow up and play for Manchester United. This was before they had, the women's side of seeing, of course, players like Christian Press and Tobin Heath
Hmm.
go over there. But yes, it took a lot of my parents saying, "Sweetie, you can't do that." I'm like, why can't I do that? But of course, I digress into any opportunity to talk about my oh so terrible club. We won't talk about Champions League and yesterday. It was bad. But
I could talk about that stuff for hours, but yeah, we'll let that
oh
pass.
yes. So I know there's we'll talk about a fellow former Notre Dame player and one of your best friends, Bilal Duckett. One of the first questions I asked him when we spoke, God, years ago. And again, we said he's the reason QCFC exists. So B, if you're listening to this, your shout out is here. But first thing I asked him, like, yeah, do you follow any clubs outside of, obviously you play for the Eagles, but who you're interested in? He's an Arsenal man.
Yeah.
I hold it against him to this day. So same question to you. Do you have any particular club or clubs outside of the states that you follow?
Yes, I am a Chelsea supporter.
Oh, we all have
Don't
our
do
flaws.
that. I'll say it's a good time to be a Chelsea fan and not an Arsenal fan.
It is a great time. It is definitely a great time. But hey, Stamford Bridge it's a beauty, and you can't knock, everything that club has done for their community over in London throughout this pandemic. Can't knock it. Can't say that I like the club, but I can't knock their hustle. So
yeah, absolutely. And also Frank, I just really excited to see kind of where his coaching career is going, and how he is a manager, and kind of seeing how he translates, his playing philosophy into his coaching philosophy is really interesting to watch.
Now, to that end, is coaching something that you have done or would consider doing as, your career evolves and progresses on?
Yeah, I would, yes, absolutely. I don't know if it's really a smart decision. I feel like coaches go through so much stress, and it really is I feel like these coaches treat teams like a child almost. It's such an investment, and they're just giving their entire selves. But that being said, I would love it. I know I would love it. So, I don't know, what that timeline looks like or if it will ever happen, but I would definitely be open to, going down that route.
Well, we will certainly keep our eyes and ears open for where to watch you play in 2021, because 2021 is less than a month away. Not sure how that happened, but it's almost here. And we will
Don't get me
also
nervous.
it's no nerves. Just we'll sip some coffee and be like, it's fine. It's all fine. It's all totally fine. But it has been an absolute pleasure chatting with you today, Erin. Thank you so much for joining us on Sports Charlotte. Much success with everything that you've got going on, from everything on the pitch to the real estate side of things, to the philanthropy side of things. I mean, you are definitely busy, but it's more for us to talk and write about. So we appreciate it. Stay busy.
Thank you so much for having me, Ashley. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. We'll have to do it again soon. And for all of you who are listening to Sports Charlotte for the first time, or you are a returning guest, we're so glad that you decided to join us today. Make sure that you head over to the Queen City Podcast Network. You can find all sorts of fabulous podcasts, not just Sports Charlotte, but all sorts of fabulous podcasts over there. You can check us out on Spotify, SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, the works, whatever your preference is. You can also head over to thecharlottepost.com, head to the QCFC tab, find all of our soccer-specific content there, and you can also check the paper out every single Thursday. And you know how to do all of this. Just go to thecharlottepost.com. It's really all there for you. Make sure you subscribe to our newsletter every Tuesday morning, 7 a.m. in your inbox. And until next time, I am your host, Ashley Mahoney. Thank you for joining me.